It's Coach D here. I'm a post-secondary and workforce readiness coach, author, and speaker. And I'm empowering educators, inspiring students, and transforming schools one conversation at a time. Welcome to Coach D Wants to Know, the podcast where we dive deep into all things post-secondary success. Whether it's career readiness through college, trade schools, the military, apprenticeships, or entrepreneurships, we're talking about it. This podcast is for school leaders, counselors, business owners, parents, and students who want to explore every opportunity behind high school. Because when we know better, we guide better. So let's jump in and uncover the possibilities together because Coach D wants to know.
No experience is going to be the same, right? There's no textbook or a page number that you can go to, right? I've had that. I'm sure you've had that experience. I've had it too. The parent and the parent and the student cussing me out in my office, right? How do you navigate that first year AP? And so I think leadership is not about just learning theory. You have to have a framework towards solving problems. And so that's what you speak to. I need to be able to figure things out quickly on the fly, ethically, doing things according to the code of conduct, making sure that I'm submitted to the vision of the principal as well, right? Everything has to be in alignment. And so education administration programs, as great as they are, there are gaps in everything, right? There's no knock on the programs. I just think that the more practical experiences aspiring leaders have and the more coaching they get, the better off that they're going to be.
And it's Coach D here. Welcome to Coach D Wants to Know, where we empower educators, we inspire students, and we transform schools one conversation at a time. And today on the show, I am blessed to have with me Dr. Smalls. So, Dr. Smalls, would you please tell everybody who you are and a little bit about your business and your goals, what you do right now in the education sector?
So hello, everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you, Kim, for having me on. I truly appreciate the opportunity. I am Dr. Donovan Smalls II. I am an educator, current assistant principal. I'm a best-selling author and a school leadership coach. And so as an assistant principal, I'm at the middle school level, which I really feel like those are the transitional stages of development for our students. And I feel like, although people say that middle school might be the most challenging, I feel like I am called to serve that particular demographic. As a school leadership coach, I work with aspiring school leaders, helping them land their first leadership role, navigate complex dynamics, enhance their communication skills, and drive instructional excellence. And so for me, my purpose really is about helping other people as I climb as well. So as I get to the next level, I'm always looking to coach and mentor other people.
All right. I love that. And you spoke on middle school. I did 4 years. I call it my tour of duty, my 4 years tour of duty in middle school. And it was a great experience. It was different because I had been in high school. Well, of course, I was in the college level at first. So I was the director of financial aid at a college. Decided that I wanted to go back into the school system because of what was coming to the college level. And I noticed that they truly weren't prepared. They had checked off a box by graduating from high school. They had checked off a box by doing their FAFSA. They had checked off a box by, doing the application, but they had no idea how to check off the boxes for graduating on time within 4 years and not in a ton of student loan debt.
Right.
So I decided I was going to go into the school system, and I left there and I started teaching in South Carolina. So I did high school there for a number of years, loved it. And then there was a position closer to home because I was commuting one way, almost an hour and a half every day. I was leaving Georgia.
Wow.
I was leaving Georgia going to South Carolina. So I was leaving, Toccoa, Georgia, driving all the way to Greenville, South Carolina, every day, one way, there, hour and a half almost, and then coming back. So it was taxing, but I loved what I did. But again, a position came available in a town closer. It was still in South Carolina, but it was closer to my hometown. And I did my 4 years at Seneca Middle School. I loved it. Had an amazing principal, amazing leaders, which is what we're going to talk about tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all very instrumental in shaping who I became as a leader. And so I'm blessed. My first principals from South Carolina, Dr. William Roach, I love him. He knows that I shout him out all the time. We talk about great leaders. He was an amazing leader, and he fed into us, and he made sure that if he knew that leadership was where we wanted to end up, he was going to put us in positions to
Right.
experience leadership from within the classroom, within the building, in the hallways. He gave us opportunities to sit in leadership positions. And I've been blessed to be able to do that at every school. So that has been amazing to me. So
Mm-hmm.
before I became a school leader, I was already doing leadership work.
Right. Which
So
is
to me,
extremely
that's
important. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot of that as we go through, because that's what you do is you coach those people who want to become leaders, and you help them move through from the mindset of a teacher to the mindset of a leader. So
Right.
we're gonna go through a lot about that tonight. So again, I'm so excited to have you here because we do a lot of the similar work. You
Mm-hmm.
on one hand are working with them, trying to get them to become aspiring leaders. And even in my book, that's one of the last chapters, helping them understand to express that I want to go on to the next level. And then
Mm-hmm.
for your principals in the building and your assistant principals to recognize that, to be able to keep them going and keep them in the mindset that I can get there, so that they don't get so burnt out thinking that nobody wants to hire me, or I'm always going to be in this classroom. And not that they're not a great teacher, but they want more, but it just doesn't seem like they can break out of the classroom. So I'm glad you're here. So, we can have this great conversation about what you do and coaching them on to that next level. Because again, I'm trying to keep them. My burnout book is trying to keep them in the building,
Right.
keep them in the roles. And so if I keep them there and I keep them where they need to be, then they can journey on and get your book and your coaching program and move on to fulfillment. That's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that last chapter talks about, career fulfillment. They want to come out of the classroom and they're great, but
Right.
sometimes there are certain circumstances that they don't know,
Uh-huh.
and it needs
Absolutely.
to be pulled out of them. They need to be coached, and they need to understand how to effectively be seen, even though you're in a classroom. There are
Yep.
things that you can do to get to the next level. So we're going to talk about that. But first, I want to talk about your personal journey and your calling into leadership. So, what drew you into education leadership in the first place?
Honestly, educational leadership wasn't something that I saw myself doing. So I was a health and physical education teacher. I started to feel this tug toward going into higher education. I wanted to do more. At the time, my dad was working on his doctorate at Morgan State University. And so, for some reason, even though I said I wasn't going back to school, I decided to start looking into sport management programs in higher ed. And so I found this program. I started doing my research, and then eventually I enrolled. And after defending my dissertation in 2019, I ended up getting a call back from my college, my master's degree program. They called me back. They said, "Hey, we do have this professor position open." And so I took the position. This was about a week after defending my dissertation. And so I get into higher education. I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. I'm thriving, loving academic freedom. Right. I'm teaching 2 courses a day. I'm done at 11:50 every day. Really enjoying that. But then COVID hits. So when COVID hits, a lot of colleges and universities are having budgeting issues. First one hired, first one fired. So at that time, my wife was finishing a year of fellowship. She's in the medical field. And so she was about to go to Cincinnati, Ohio. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm looking for a job at this point. Let me go with you to Cincinnati. So within the same month of me losing my job at Virginia State University as a professor, I find a health and physical education job in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so I'm starting to see in this particular school that the leadership didn't reflect what I was used to. It didn't reflect some of the core values in terms of really keeping students first and also taking care of your teachers. And so for me, instead of complaining about the issue, I decided I wanted to be a part of the solution. So I started looking at these education administration programs and leadership and seeing what I could do. And maybe going toward the principalship might have been for me. And so I enrolled, started doing my internship. During that time, I'm halfway done. And then it's time for us to move back to New Jersey, where we're from. So as we moved back to New Jersey, I ended up getting a health and physical education job back at the middle school where I left before I became a professor.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished all of my training, thriving in that role. And then that's when my first school leadership position opened at Union High School, back where I graduated high school from.
Oh, I
So
love
my
it.
journey really was, I think, a call toward being a solution to some of the issues that I saw, really wanting to create change instead of just complaining about things. Let me see how I can support and how I can help. So that's kind of how my journey started.
Okay, I love that. And I love the fact that you were able to return and give back and, help out where, in a place that raised you. That's what I love. I'm toying back and forth. I've been talking about it, and just going back. I'll write about it in my journal sometimes. Something
Mhm.
is pulling me back to the high school where I graduated from.
Okay.
So again, I'm going back and forth in my mind about it. But, I think the same reasons that got you into leadership,
Mhm.
wanting to be a solution.
Right.
When you see certain things going on, but it can shift and you can shift. And a lot of times it's with the mindset.
Hmm.
A lot of times it's with your belief in the culture. And some people, even in leadership, and I've seen this sometimes, they are burnout. They may have been great teachers, they may have been great principals or school leaders in the beginning, but COVID was taxing on a lot of people.
It was. It
It
really
was
was.
taxing.
Hmm.
And after COVID, I think a lot of people did not take the time to reset and to revisit their why. Now, we came out of COVID as leaders, because I was a leader after COVID. We came out telling everybody, you got to check in with your why. You got to, why are you
Right.
here? Why are you doing this work? But I'm just not sure that a lot of the leaders did that same work.
I
So,
agree. I agree. Yeah. It's that self-reflection piece that you talked about is extremely important, right? It's what continues to help us to grow and to develop. And even thinking about what you were saying kind of makes me reflect on a lot of the a lot of what I've learned about from COVID was that we aren't in as much control as we actually think we are. And
mhm.
so we just have to continue to step toward whatever destiny we believe that we are on. And, for us, it's education. But like you said, we have to continue to be locked into that self reflection piece.
Definitely. So, what do you think was the most defining moment when you realized coaching would be your calling? So I know you talked about the school where you went, the middle school, then back to the high school,
Mhm.
but like what literally solidified it for you saying, okay, I'm in ed leadership. I see all of this that's going on. I know I can be a help. What was that moment that said, okay, yeah, I've got to start coaching. I've got to help out so that I can help raise up our next generation of leaders. So what was that defining moment for you?
For me, it was the mentors that I had who coached me. As we were kind of talking about earlier, I had people who pulled me out of the classroom when I expressed I want to be a leader. So
Mhm.
they were the ones that said, okay, you want to be a leader? Let's see you shadow one of the assistant principals, and you're going to do lunch duty, or you're going to do bus duty before school starts, or you're going to help the students cross the parking lot and serve as a crossing guard, right? It might not have been those glamorous positions, but it allowed me to get the visibility and the experience that I needed to speak to safety and security, right? I was
Mhm.
a part of our data team as I was a teacher, which data is extremely important, right? We need to make data driven decisions. But if
Mhm.
you're a teacher and you don't have that experience, it might be a little harder for you to land that first leadership role. And
Mhm.
so I started to realize as I was coached, I also need to be coaching other people. And
Mhm.
then people started to seek me out and ask me questions and literally asked me to start coaching them within the school building. And so I realized that, okay, here is a niche that I found that is important and is impactful. And it ultimately leads to us having better schools for our kids. And
Yes.
so I think we have instructional coaches in a lot of our schools in terms of helping teachers, but do we also have coaches who are going to help our leaders? And so that was a gap that I decided to fill because of the people who poured into me.
I like that. Again, you found a gap, you found a need, and you filled that. And you were spot on when you talked that there are instructional coaches. Again, they're helping our teachers be better teachers in that classroom.
Mhm.
So again, you're training them up and you're getting them to where they need to be to move the academic needle, to make sure our students are seen, heard, they feel safe, they're meeting the needs of our students. But again, that's just in that classroom, what we talked about earlier. Those teachers have those aspirations of one day leaving the classroom. And I think there gets to be this, you don't know which side of the seesaw you're on when you know you have great teachers and you want them to leave, but as a leader, you're like, oh my God, who's going to replace them?
Right.
I want them to go because they'll be great and whatever, but I need
Mhm.
them here in my building too because they're great.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, what you just talked about, if that's the caliber of teachers you have in your building, just like you were just saying, mentor them, pull more than just that one, two, that same person that you're pulling on, and you don't even really know you're burning them out. In
Mm.
one mindset, you feel like you're honoring them by always
Mhm.
giving them these responsibilities, or because you know you can count on them.
Right.
But that person who is always the one that, yeah, you can count on me, yeah, you call on me, that's the person that's secretly getting burnt out as well.
Right.
And then in their minds, like, there's 100 people in this building.
Mhm.
Why are you always putting this on me? But what we do is we put on our super teacher armor and
Yep.
we do it because it's for the kids.
Right. Right.
So
That's a great point too. I mean, the burnout piece is something that I really never considered. We're training some teachers to be leaders,
mhm,
and sometimes we can ask them to do so much thinking that they need all of these experiences, which a lot of times they do.
mhm,
However, we also need to consider, are they burning out secretly, as you mentioned? And they might not ever tell us because they don't want to lose out on opportunities, or
mhm,
they think that they might disappoint us, or even that power structure between the leader and the teacher.
mhm,
They feel like they might be obligated to do it, right? It's like in sports when the coach tells you to get into the gym. It's not mandatory, but you
mhm.
need to, but if you feel obligated to be there because
Right.
you're my coach. And so
Mhm.
I think that burnout piece is something that I also need to be self-reflective about. Like, am I giving too many responsibilities, or do I need to tap into some other individuals who also expressed that they wanted to be leaders as well? So that's really important.
Yeah, I work a part-time job that has some really great benefits. That's why I do it.
Mhm.
And in there, they were like, we give you the tougher people to lead because we know you can handle it. I'm like, that's not fair. I
Mm,
mean, it sounds like a badge of honor. It
right.
sounds great that you believe in me and you know I can handle this work, but we got all these other people who are in that same role making the same amount of money, but I've
Right.
got a tougher job just because I can do it better. No,
Right.
let's train up everybody, pull on everybody because you're only as strong as your weakest link. We
Yeah.
hear that all the time. So there are a lot of people who hide in their rooms and do great in their classrooms. Those are the same people who could do great with certain responsibilities. So it doesn't always have to be, like we said, on that one or two that we know we can depend on,
Yeah.
because they are, like you just said, they have the aspiration of being a leader. They want to step out. They want to be seen. They want to be noticed and be visible, like you said, but
Mhm.
they don't want to be the only one always having to do everything as well.
Right. Right.
So definitely great points. Okay, so let me see. I think this one is a good one. What are, tell me about your role. How has your role as an assistant principal
Mhm.
shaped your approach to coaching? Let's start there.
Mm. Um, so I was fortunate to have two different experiences as an assistant principal. I started off at a high school,
Mhm.
my former high school, where a lot of the teachers who I was responsible for leading were once my teachers when I was a student. So
Mhm.
that kind of brought an interesting dynamic of how do you lead and coach and even mentor teachers
Mhm.
who might be significantly older than you, who might still see you as their
Mhm.
student, right? That interpersonal dynamic that needs to be explored. How are you going to do that? Right? I
Mhm.
was in a different environment in terms of high school, different terms of different types of issues, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then on the other hand, right now, I am an assistant principal at a middle school, completely different dynamic. And
Mhm.
so my role as an assistant principal, as a vice principal, it prepared me for coaching because what I've noticed is a lot of the people who want to be leaders, sometimes personally, sometimes they might not necessarily see that it's in their reach unless somebody might be a few steps ahead of them, right? Sometimes when somebody is 20, 30 years in, it might be difficult for them to see themselves in that leader. But for
Mhm.
me, I'm 3 years, I'm going to complete my third year as an assistant principal. People can see, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. And
Mhm.
so that's what I've noticed. It's these experiences are fresh in my mind, which allows people to connect to them. And I think that connection point is what has attracted a lot of aspiring leaders to want to be coached by me.
Okay, I love that, it sounds to me, and I'm just, I haven't been in the room with you in the coaching yet, but it definitely sounds like great piece of this. The
Mhm.
foundation, the blueprint is based in relationships.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Relationships are everything. Without the relationship, I think it's hard to coach someone because number one, it's you have to figure out their personality and how they're going to receive your coaching. Some
mhm,
people you can coach in a way that gives them more constructive criticism, that speaks more to their areas of growth, but the other person, you might have to coach them up and talk more about their strengths, right?
mhm.
I think it's about learning who that person is foundationally, and then that allows you to coach them in a way that is personalized. So, yeah, the relationship is the foundation of coaching, it's the foundation of leadership.
Yes, I definitely agree. So we're going to transition. We're going to move on a little bit. We're going to talk about the readiness gap for aspiring leaders. So, in your experience, what's the biggest mismatch between formal preparation and real world readiness?
I think it's the real world readiness. I don't think a book in and of itself can prepare you for the experiences that you're going to have as a leader. I don't
Mhm.
think that one particular program, as it relates to a master's education administration program, can comprehensively prepare an aspiring leader to get to the next level. I think what I've noticed is a lot of programs focus on the educational piece, like teaching you content,
Mhm.
but in terms of preparing you it- to position yourself for promotion and the career shifts that you actually need, those tangible and practical experiences, right? How to write your resume in a way that highlights your teaching experiences in a leadership perspective.
Mhm.
How are you going to answer these interview questions? What practical experiences can you get now as a teacher to prepare you for leadership? That's really the gap in terms of what I've been able to notice and based off of market research. Like a lot of aspiring leaders talk about, okay, I've gotten the degree, I've
Mhm.
made a 20, $30,000 investment, but
Mhm.
how do I parlay that into the role now? I have the education, I have the background, I understand curriculum and instruction,
Mhm.
but I might not know what experiences I need. I might not have a mentor. I might need to be coached, right? I might need just a little bit more practical understanding of what this is going to be. I have no clue. And so
Mhm.
for me, I don't think that just because a person was an amazing classroom teacher, automatically it means that they're going to be a great school leader.
Correct.
So that's where I've noticed that the gap is, that readiness gap exists between classroom teaching and school leadership.
Now, I think for me, I am blessed for my training.
Mm-hmm.
It was during the transition with COVID and everything that was going on. I was in a tier 1 leadership program at Georgia State, and it is a program that is built on experiences, just like you talked about, not so much the textbook. So of course we had the books that we went that went along with the program. However, we had to do 200 clinical hours. So while I'm still in the classroom, I had to do the 200 clinical hours in my building of leadership. Right. And my principal was my mentor. So at that time, I had the mentorship. So you had to have a mentor. You had to check in with them regularly, and they had to really critique you. But you had to get 200 hours that were already outlined to put you in various roles in leadership. Some was within the building, and then I had hours where I was able to go and shadow some middle school principals. I was down there for 2 days. I did bus duty. I was sitting in on situations with parents. I was in there. I even was in on ISS, so the lunch detention, all of the above. So I mean, I did it all. And again, just being on those committees, being in leadership, being shadowing my principal, like you said, there was probably 10 or 15% came out of a textbook. And then on top of that, at the same time, I was in Principal Kafele's AP leadership program at the beginning when that was first COVID was coming on. So I did that whole 52 weeks. So it was like getting everything was like real world, just like what you talked about. Very little textbook. And I know when I coach teachers and I talk to them all the time, I'm like, there is no chapter 30, page 29 when some kid is cussing you out.
Definitely not.
There's not a chapter that you can refer to on he's cussing me out. What do I do now?
Right. You got to figure it out. You made a great point, because in leadership, no experience is going to be the same. Right? There's no textbook or a page number that you can go to. Right? I've had that. I'm sure you've had that experience. I've had it too. The parent and the parent and the student cussing me out in my office. Right? How do you navigate that first year AP? And so I think leadership is not about just learning theory. You have to have a framework towards solving problems. And so that's what you speak to. I need to be able to figure things out quickly on the fly, ethically, doing things according to the code of conduct, making sure that I'm submitted to the vision of the principal as well. Right? Everything has to be in alignment. And so education administration programs, as great as they are, there are gaps in everything, right? There's no knock on the programs. I just think that the more practical experiences aspiring leaders have and the more coaching they get, the better off that they're going to be.
And again, you alluded not too long ago to sports. That's the same thing with sports. You know, I'm going to play how I practice. That, you know, and if I'm not in, because again, I used to coach, and if I don't put those girls in game-like situations, clock running, the whole night, the pressure situations, when the pressure is on and you're in the game, they're not going to be able to perform.
Not at all.
Not at all. So it correlates to everything. You have to be moving through the pressures and learning how to overcome the challenges so that everybody comes out a winner. And even those kids, the parents, cussing, students, everybody, we've had those circumstances, but everybody can come out a winner. Sometimes, okay, I'm gonna let you say just probably one more minute. You got one more minute, ma'am. Okay, and then and then I'm gonna speak. So, and at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure my point is going to get across, and we're gonna all be able to come to an agreement.
Right.
That's going to benefit us all at the most, and the core of it all. Your child is going to benefit.
Yes.
So, and that's the bottom line. We are in this together. I am your partner. in this, and we're going to get your child across the finish line together. And so you're going to have to trust me on this one.
Right.
Everything they're coming home to tell you is not 100% the truth,
Mm-hmm.
but together as a unit, we can get to the truth. Even now, I mean, being back in the classroom with kids, you calling your parent on your phone and I want it on speaker, we're going to both talk at the same, we're going to have a conversation together. So
Right.
there's no misunderstandings.
Right.
We're going to get it all cleared up together.
Together.
And,
right.
Yeah. I had a parent on the phone just the other day and I told her, I'm calling you as a mom because there's some concerns as a mom. I'm stepping out of teacher role. Mm-hmm. I'm calling you as a mom. I have, your child right here. Let's all have a conversation so that we can all get back on the right track and make sure your child gets every opportunity that they're prepared to get. So.
Right. Absolutely. And you kind of talked a little bit about self-awareness and emotional intelligence and all those things that, aspiring leaders need to make sure that they have. When you are having a difficult conversation with a parent, you have to be able to remove your emotions from it and not go back at them, but understand that they are expressing a concern for their child. Yeah. And that's the key. We need to figure out a solution in a way that is respectful. And you as a leader, you don't have an opportunity to speak disrespectfully to anyone, right? Mm-hmm. I understand taking a stand and not being disrespected. I believe that. But at the same time, you have to have enough emotional intelligence to understand this is about the child and how we help them succeed. So yeah, that was great.
Yeah. It's something, it has to be learned. And I think you're on the right track with your model of coaching that up. But again, we'll until you are placed in those environments to succeed and to learn that, it's not going to come overnight. You jumping from the classroom automatically into those roles with no coaching, no mentorship, no experiences with it is not the best route to take. No. Because this is not something that I can slow down till you get to where you need to be. We're going, it doesn't stop. It's 100. If you get the position, you in the position, let's rock and roll.
Yep.
So there's no waiting period until you can catch up. You need to be ahead of it already. So I agree. And the way you get ahead, the way you go ahead and spring forward is to be in those roles while you're in the classroom. Jump out, like you said, get into the positions, be seen, be visible, get on committees, ask to shadow. So I definitely, yes, I agree with all of that 100%. Mm-hmm. So can you walk us through a success story of someone that you've coached?
So recently, I've been coaching a student. She's also a teacher in my school. She's in an education admission program, and she started off really thinking, okay, I might need 2 to 3 years in terms of me being ready for leadership. She didn't actually feel like she was as ready as she thought. And so as we continued to work together throughout this school year, we've had our coaching sessions. I've been able to pull her into different experiences. Like right now, this is our state testing season. So she's working closely with me on scheduling. And then I was able to send her to the former school that I worked at to shadow the principal over there. And so last week we started having a conversation, and she said that she thinks that she's ready for leadership now. She was saying how a few months ago, she didn't really feel it, but the experiences that she was able to get in our daily conversations, she says she thinks that this is going to be her last year in the classroom. And so I'm just proud of the progress that we were able to make. Obviously, all credit and kudos goes to her for putting in the work. But I think it's just a testament to what coaching can do, right? It's not always about the end result, but I think it's about the transformation and who you become throughout that process. And so it's great to see who she has become, her confidence level, and her just ability to see like, yeah, I can do this and I'm ready for this.
Right. And again, with coaching, I will always go back to the sport, because if you hear the word coach, you're always going to think about athletics.
Right.
And if you've played a sport, managed the team, took the stats, you were the water girl, water boy, whatever, you have seen the progress that team had at the beginning of the season to where they are at the end of the season, if there's a good coach in place.
Right.
And so that's the same thing with us, with educators, with teachers, with aspiring leaders. That coach that's with them is going to identify where their areas of challenge are. And you're going to come up with a plan to get them from where they are today to where they want to be by the end of the coaching period. So it's all about where they are, where they want to be, and what is in the middle, that whatever plan, whatever program you put together, but putting them in those experiences. Like you said, she went from a doubtful mindset about her abilities, but you've placed her in those roles to let her know that you've got it.
Right.
You just needed to walk in it, experience it, and see that you can do it. You're getting the little bits of confidence more and more each day as you get to see, you get to hear the lingo, you get to hear the language, you see what's going on in the conference room. You might walk by, you see it, or you always hear, oh, they're in a meeting, or they're in a leadership meeting, they're in there, they're working on the budget, or they're working on whatever. And so to you, all that's foreign if you haven't been in the room.
Right.
Scheduling that whole board can look like, oh my God.
Right.
Like, you know, when it's time to schedule for the new school year. But to be in there, and now I understand what every slot, what every block is. I understand what the budget, I understand allocations. You've gotten the experience to it. You're used to it because you're hearing the lingo and you're in the system differently.
Right.
And so that's where you gain your wings, you gain your confidence. And I'm glad you got her to the point to where she feels like she can fly in those arenas now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think she's also noticing that when you step into leadership, you're also a part of a team. And so you might not, and you're not going to know everything, right? Nobody knows everything, but are you able to work with other people well to the point where they can pick you up in areas where you need more experience? And then as a leader, how are you then putting other people in place to be great and to thrive in what they do, and taking your ego out of it and not thinking that it needs to be all about you, right? It's about the team.
Correct.
And so once you start looking at things from a team mindset, I think it's going to help expand and grow that confidence level as well.
There's nothing like having a good team. People, like I said, if you know everybody's strengths, you know who you can put in what role, you know who to group together, you know that you have the confidence that you are leading a group of individuals who are all on the same battlefield.
Right.
You are all in it to win it. You're all in it for kids. And you show up to those meetings, you show up to your leadership meetings, and everybody's ready to roll up the sleeves, get the work done, and then know that at the end of the school year, those goals y'all established together as a team, because you built those goals together. Then you all bought in, you all truly understood the vision, and you worked together the whole time. And then at the end, yes, it's a lot of work. Yes, it's nights. Yes, it's some headaches. But when you get to the end of the year, and you've been watching your data along the way, because you got to watch the data the whole way. That's how, you got to make shifts according to what the data is telling you, what your gut is telling you, what your team is telling you. But to get to the end and be able to see how much your school building has grown in that year, it's amazing. There's no feeling like it. I believe my last year when I was leading, my assistant and I were cleaning out the refrigerator. We were just getting some things out before summer. You know, you get that whole all call. The refrigerator will be cleaned out at 12 p.m. You know, all of that. So you're taking out stuff and everything. And it was like, we had looked at the data. I had done my evaluations, my last summative, my conferences with everyone. And to know my first year when I'm asking them to bring data in and to speak to their student growth and all of that, they really couldn't do that as well as I wanted them to, because they hadn't been trained. It was not their norm to talk about data. So we got to find the data. We're going to look through the data. We're going to find the holes. We're going to figure out how to make our instruction better, how to get these kids where they need to be. But by the end of that year, if we could drink on school grounds, we would have toasted but we had some ginger shots because remember we still coming out of COVID at this
Right,
time.
right, right. There you go.
Shots in the refrigerator. So we took a ginger shot and toasted it because of the growth in our teachers and how everybody is looking at the data. Everybody is digesting it and speaking, and they can give me predictions on, well, how do you think they're going to end up on their EOPA? So what do you think? What are your predictions? Or who are you? They could name the students who needed the extra. So for me to see that growth, like you were saying, that gap, when my teachers had a gap, and I was able to help fill that gap, and we were able to celebrate it. So that's what it's about.
That's what it's about. Yeah.
Yeah. So that again, I love coaching. I'm a proponent of it. We're going to segue into why coaching matters. If there was anything that I could tell principals that they definitely need to invest in is quality coaches. Make sure your coaches are in there for your teachers. Make sure your coaches are in there, your mentors are in there to help push those people into leadership that really want to be there. To me, it's just, and the coaches that I've had, the coach that I became, the leader that I became, I took myself out of that relationship role, that confidence role, so that they knew they could go to the coaches, and the coaches were going to come and not tell me stuff that was given to them in confidence, but the coaches were going to talk to me about, okay, this is what our teachers need. We want to make sure we're implementing this. So they had that mediary, that person in the middle that they could go to.
Right.
And really get the frustration off their chest.
Yeah.
Really be able to speak what was on their hearts and say, this is what we need. And then my coaches knew that I trusted them enough to be able to bring it, and we're going to figure it out.
Right.
We're going to figure it out.
Right. Right.
So for you, how does one-on-one coaching accelerate leadership growth compared to traditional professional development?
So I think traditional professional development, it really isn't as tailored as one-on-one coaching. And so one-on-one coaching really focuses on the individual's strengths, weaknesses, and how we can fill those gaps, right? You get that one-on-one time. And so what I've learned is, in coming from an athletic background, if LeBron James, if Steph Curry, and all of these amazing basketball players invest in coaching outside of their organization, what makes us think that we also don't need to invest in outside coaching, right? Or some sort of coaching and mentorship. And so I think if we ultimately want to get to the next level in our leadership and get to leadership in general, we have to invest in becoming better, right? If you're not investing in your personal and professional development, I don't think you are doing the best that you can for kids and the best that you can for teachers. And so as aspiring leaders, I don't want them to look at getting to a leadership role as the pinnacle of success, where now you get to dictate and tell everyone what to do without you also investing in your own development, right? Like, you can't start providing PD to teachers, but then you don't also invest in your PD. You're not on the conferences, you're not on, Zoom calls, or, looking at YouTube channels to see how you can get better in your game, in your profession. And so coaching is extremely important. And I think it cannot be and should not be just limited to teachers. I think it needs to also be with leaders. And so that's why I try to fill this gap. And that's why I'm constantly focused on professional development, right? Any way that I can learn about things, listening to a podcast, reading a book, going to a conference, listening to other people who have more wisdom and experience than me, I think it ultimately helps me be better when I take that back to my students and also the people that I coach. So coaching does matter.
It does matter. And I was always that teacher, because you're going to see it. If I was going to a conference, I'm going to the conference.
Yes.
I'm going to the sessions.
I know what you mean.
I got my whole map. Okay, I got to go this one, I'm going, because I'm going there to learn so that I can get better, grow, and then I can take that back and help others as well. So I
Yeah.
think again that's very important for the teachers, for the leaders, whomever. When you're at these conferences, go and learn. There is
Yes.
great material, there are great strategies. And I was always going back then. I'm going with a flash drive. You see, can I get that?
Hmm.
There was never any shame in my game about, okay, are you willing to share that? I love that resource and I'd be able to take that back as well.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like the professional learning networks that really started to grow during COVID when we were online. Those
Yeah.
networks, because you built your network and I've got resources all over the place. Oklahoma, we were all on calls together, and it was a beautiful experience to be able to grow.
Right.
Because again, these were people that were already in leadership. They knew I was going into leadership, but they
Yeah.
were principals and they were superintendents. Everybody was on these calls and everybody was helping others grow. So again, that professional learning network,
Yeah.
please, please, please make sure that you have that intact and you know who you can call on and who's going to be a great resource for you.
Yeah. And speaking of conferences, I think one of the beauties of conferences is just the combination of people who are there, right?
Mhm,
I think we can limit our success and how great we think that we are
mhm.
because of the environment that we're in.
Right.
But then when you start meeting other people who are doing great things or doing things differently, and you start getting these ideas and resources, like you said, it just makes you a better leader. And
Mhm,
so I challenge people to get outside of their comfort zone. Go to a conference outside of your state if you can,
mhm,
just so you can get a different perspective and see the great things that other people are doing. Right?
mhm.
Great things are happening where you are, but there's so much more out there that you can bring back for your students if you have an opportunity to expand your network.
That is definitely true. Even when I was in the classroom, I would tell the kids to stop thinking local and think global.
Mm,
I would use that to the mindset that, okay, you're trying to get this scholarship, you're trying to write. You don't need to worry about who's around you and are you better than these people that are around you, because there are people all over this world who are applying for that same scholarship.
yeah,
So you can't just think that what you're doing or what you see, you're the best one in your area or you're the
mm,
best one at it. Because until you start to measure, you start to go to these conferences and like, oh my, there is another level that I can take this to. I didn't
yeah,
know about that. I thought I was doing great, but now I see that there are other schools, other districts that are doing some really, really greater and grander things. And how
right,
can I step my game up and reach that?
yeah. And one more thing. So I think speaking of this, really, my first conference I went to was outside of my state, huge national conference. And I started to see educators who were also speaking, who were also doing coaching and writing books. And I felt the desire in me to do these things, but I didn't know if it was possible until I started seeing these other people do it. And I was inspired by it. And I was able to see that their impact expanded beyond their school, beyond their district. And so I'm like, I want to be that person too. I don't want to just be the person that's local. I want to be the person that's global, not to have my name in lights or anything like that, but just to have a greater impact on teachers, on leaders, on students, right? And I think that's the beauty of expanding your mind by going to other places. Is
Mhm.
just seeing what's possible, because what's in you might be sparked by what other people are doing. So yeah, I like that phrase, don't think local, think global.
Have to. You have to. That's the only
Yeah.
way that we'll start to expand and have a greater reach.
Right.
Have a greater reach. Okay. How do you measure the impact of your coaching on school culture and student outcomes? So how do you measure that what you're doing is really working?
So, as an assistant principal, the way that I measure it is honestly based on the relationships, right? It's how are people able to open up to me to express their concerns? I think as a leader, you'll see that there is a power structure, right? Even if it's unspoken, where people might have this, I won't say fear, but this hesitation of you being in their classroom, or hesitation of them truly telling you what needs to be changed within the school building. And so I think if you open up the lines of communication, lead with your humanity and your relationships, it shows that people can trust you and they can be vulnerable with you to share what's truly on their mind without thinking there's going to be a repercussion that comes with that. And
Mhm.
so the more I'm able to build authentic relationships with staff and students, that's truly the impact that I'm able to see, where people feel more comfortable in being who they are. They feel
Mhm.
more comfortable being the educator that they decided to be when they were in college, right? The students feel more comfortable in expressing themselves, and academic achievement ultimately is going to increase. And so I think the way that people interact within the school building ultimately influences the culture and climate, and I measure that based on the relationships, right? Everything increases, student achievement increases once our relationships get better.
I agree. I think I spent more time in the classrooms than I did doing my leadership work. And so that caused some late nights and some weekend work or whatever. But my teachers became very comfortable with me coming in the room because they knew I wasn't coming in there to critique them.
Mhm.
I was coming in, if and this was stuff that I had no knowledge of, and that was your specialty. If you can teach me,
Right.
and I'm learning and I'm enjoying it, then I know these kids are as well. So I used to go in and scoot right beside the kid. What are y'all doing?
Mhm.
Culinary arts. I'm in there trying to cut whatever the potato, however they're saying I'm supposed to cut it.
Mhm.
When I go into the drone, I had a drone program at my school as well. I became a certified commercial drone pilot because I'm going in here, I'm doing my observations, I'm doing my walkthroughs, my fulls, my 30-minute ones, whatever. I'm doing those, and the instruction, and the kids are learning and they're enjoying it, and it's hands-on, and they're doing and learning and moving forward. So I'm like, well, first of all, I want to learn this too. I want to get in this red bird simulator, and I want to try to drive, fly it and everything. But I was so inspired by the teachers
Mhm.
that I had in each one of these pathways that I wanted to learn and do everything that they were teaching. So I knew that once those barriers of a new leader walking into the building
Right.
with, here comes a new vision, here comes new mission, here comes
Mhm.
new expectations, I was able to really break down those walls and those barriers by just being present, being in that room, coaching, providing really good feedback after a session when I was in there. Okay, well, what do you think about this? Well, let's try this. Well, let's find this resource. I think this, I've seen this at another place,
Mhm.
or I know somebody in another district who is doing great things. I'm going to connect the two of you because
Yeah.
I want you to meet their department chair. I want you to share resources and things like that. So it was really, even if I didn't know it because they were not all my specialty, but I
Mhm.
knew somebody who did know somebody or whatever. And I was able to connect my teachers with other resources, and then they were learning. I saw that at one point there was a technology deficit as far as the use of technology in their instruction. So of
Mhm.
course, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm not going to knock them because if they didn't have it prior to, that's
Right.
not their fault.
Yeah.
So I got to get them trained in that PD that we just talked about that is relevant
Mhm.
to them. So I set up sessions with our local technology provider to come in and get them trained on what was the latest and the greatest and what we had available to us in the district already. And then now I need to see that implemented because you've been trained on it. I
Right.
need to see you utilizing it and working through those things. And they were grateful. They were like,
Mhm.
I didn't even know we had this. And so again, assessing what they're needing and meeting their needs, and then I can give you some more feedback on, okay, now you got the tool. I need to see you make sure you're using and using
Right.
it with fidelity, the way it needs to be used.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So definitely. So as we're looking at your vision for post-secondary success, you've said that success isn't just degrees, it's purpose-driven leadership. How do we cultivate that in schools?
I think we have to start with trying to tap into what our students are great at, right?
Mhm.
I believe that everybody has a gift, everybody has a skill that they can live their life through, right?
Mhm.
And I think we have to start looking at that. Start to teach students from the inside out. Start to see what they're great at and then pair them with some of the skills and the careers, maybe not necessarily college for everyone, but
Mhm.
what skills, maybe a trade skill, right? That
Mhm.
our students are going to be great at, that they can thrive with. And so I think it's always talking about the student, keeping them at the core of what we do, and allowing their purpose to drive their career, allowing their purpose to drive the success. And so for me, I try my best to, when students talk about, well, I don't really know what I want to do with my life, right? Okay, so what are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? There that you can scale and use throughout the rest of your career, and tapping into that. And yes, it will evolve over time. It's going to change, but I think the
Mhm.
core of what we do ultimately starts with our purpose, right? And I'm thinking about myself because I started off wanting to coach. I
Mhm.
wanted to be a basketball coach. I coached college basketball for 2 years. And so I thought that coaching looked like sports, and it did for a period of time. And
Mhm.
now, as I started to think a few months ago, I'm like, I'm still coaching. It's just in a different form. And so I
Exactly.
think if we are looking at our students the same way and pointing them towards what they love to do and what they're good at, it might evolve over time, but they will ultimately be on track. And so I think post-secondary success begins with purpose.
I like that. And that's why I still have the coach D, because I coached for so many years. And that's
Right.
what I was always known as. So I continue right on, even though it's in the education sector. I'm coaching teachers, I'm coaching counselors. It's still Coach D. So
Right. Right. Still coaching.
it's still coaching.
Mhm.
So, what role do emotionally intelligent leaders play in preparing students for life beyond graduation?
So emotional intelligence to me means being able to regulate your emotions when you are feeling, um, those tough experiences as leaders that we often face.
Mhm.
Right? It's understanding what it's all about when a parent might be upset. They're concerned about their child, and they should be. Right? The
Mhm.
children are their most prized possession. It's about understanding when a teacher is frustrated about the feedback that you gave them. Many times it's because they take so much pride in what they do that they want to get it right.
Mhm.
Right. And so I think if we start to take our egos out of the situation, right, that's a way that we can be emotionally intelligent and start to look at things for what it truly is. That's how we are better for our students and our teachers. So emotional intelligence means not just being leaders focused on or solely focused on instruction all the time, but
Right.
also understanding that there's a person on the other side of the feedback that we're giving.
Mhm.
So it's about people. That's kind of been the thread of what we've been talking about. And I don't want aspiring leaders or leaders in general to lose that. We're leading people, but instruction is the core, but the foundation is people. And so I think we can't lose sight of that.
Right. Because without the people, there is no instruction.
Yeah.
We want our people to be whole, because we know if our teachers, our leaders, if they're whole and healthy and they have the emotional intelligence to navigate all the changes within the building in a day,
Mhm.
they could be your best friend today, your worst enemy tomorrow, but back to your best friend that afternoon.
Right.
And to navigate all of that successfully, we will still be able to get instruction taken care of. But
Yeah.
we do have to meet their human basic needs first. And a lot of that has to deal with the relationship, going right back to having a relationship. You can tell when you need to shift based on that shift in that person's mindset, behavior,
Mm.
attitude of the day. If you truly know that child, that teacher, that leader, you know when something is off and like this is just not the time for instruction. Let
Right.
me just take a pause here. Let me just check in to make sure my people are okay.
Yes,
Let's just
absolutely.
pause, let's check in. And then they're going to know that you see me as a human and not just another teacher, just not another body in your classroom or in your building, but you see me as a human being, and you want to check in with me to make sure I'm okay. And
Mm.
again, that's somebody that again, back to coaching, back to basketball. We have kids that will run through brick walls for coaches
Yes.
simply because they know you care more about them than that scoreboard.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
that's the exact same thing in schools. in classrooms for teachers. If those kids know you care more about them than that test score, you're going to get good test scores.
Yes, absolutely.
The teachers know this. The leaders care more about them than the data that we're always having to ask for, and we're always talking about. But I know that my leader cares about me as a person. Then I'm going to do my best to get the data that you need.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think it always goes back to that coaching mindset, that relationship building that we talked about also.
Yeah.
Let's go to your resources. You have a lot of you have a lot of resources. So for those of you can go to Donovan Smalls II.com. He has a lot of resources. So let's get into some. Let's talk about the books. Let's talk about, again, your coaching program and the prep kit, the checklist, the blueprint, the school-wide goals. Wow, you have a lot. So talk to me about some of your resources.
So my book is Beyond the Classroom, helping aspiring school leaders navigate interpersonal and organizational complexities for greater instructional impact. So the book is jam-packed with practical resources and strategies to help aspiring leaders. And as we talked about the thread of this conversation, which has been relationships, right? Relationships is an interpersonal complexity that aspiring leaders are going to face. Right. Earlier, we talked about how my first leadership role, I'm leading now teachers who once led me, who were once my teachers. That is a complex dynamic. How are you going to lead in a political climate or in a highly political district? That is extremely complex. Right. And so for me, I believe that you can't get instructional leadership right if you don't lead people and the organization well. So organizational leadership is also extremely important, right? So it's not just about curriculum and instruction. It's also, how am I leading the organization well? And so all of that is that's basically the premise of my book, right? And that is on Amazon, and it's also on my website. And so when we get into some of the additional resources, my Elevate Your Impact coaching program, it is an 8-week curriculum-based coaching program where I coach individuals one-on-one, helping them get from where they are to where they want to be as school leaders, right? So really helping them position themselves for promotion and the career shifts that they desire.
I like that. I like that. So everybody, definitely go out to DonovanSmalls2.com. You can follow him on social media. You can just put in any social media. You're going to see the Donovan Smalls II. So you're going to be able to find him. Tons of resources that are available to you to help aspiring leaders get to where they need to be. And not only get there, but be effective while they're there. That's another thing. We alluded a little bit to that earlier. A lot of people can seem to get there, but you want them to be effective. You want them to mentor and to coach others up as well. And in order to be able to do that, the emotional intelligence needs to be where it needs to be. You need to have a mentor or coach, like you were saying, that's still coaching you as well, because you can't always see the picture when you're in the frame.
Yes. Yes.
I've heard that so many times, and it takes someone else on the outside to be able to help you see areas where you need to do a little more work.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I have enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Me
I
too.
really have. It was great having this with you. So we're going to end tonight's episode, but again, it was amazing having you on. And probably, you never know, you might see us on some platforms together here soon.
Yeah.
So y'all keep watching, y'all keep following us. Again, you can find me at Kimberly Wilson Daniel on any of my platforms. You can find my guests, Dr. Smalls at Donovan Smalls II on any of his platforms. And again, we just say thank you for tuning in again to another episode of Coach D Wants to Know. Remember, together we can empower, innovate, and lead one student, one teacher, and one leader at a time. So again, thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and you all have a great afternoon. That's a wrap for today's episode of Coach D Wants to Know. I hope this conversation sparked new ideas and opened up fresh possibilities for the future. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Also, check out the resources available on my website, keystoneinstruction.com. And remember, the journey to success has many paths. Let's make sure every student finds their best fit. Until next time, together we can empower, innovate, and lead one student, one teacher, one leader at a time. See you soon.